All right, so as you guys know, Steel City Interactive, the developers for Esports Boxing Club, they contacted a few content creators, myself included, and they gave us access to brand new Esports Boxing Club gameplay footage, about 4 minutes worth of footage that we haven't seen before. And if you guys have been following like other content creators, guys like Box and Fanatico, Study, for example, these guys they've made some solid videos talking about this footage, critiquing it, giving very solid pointers. And for me, the plan I had was to make like a big video where I go over the positives and then I go over the negatives as well. But as I thought about it, actually, as I was making the video, it just didn't make much sense to me the more I thought about it. And a big reason for that being, one, a lot of people can't really stomach really long videos these days. Like the attention span of most people, very, very little. Not just that. So there's a very small chance people will actually sit through the whole entire video. But not just that, people tend to forget information, especially when a video is extremely information dense and it's also long. And so I figured that the best way to do this will be to cut the video in half. And this one is going to be part one. And in part one, I'm only going to talk about positives. That's it. We're only looking at every single thing that I liked while watching the gameplay. And that's what we're going to cover. And then in part two, we're going to break down things that I didn't like. And then we're going to go over that. So I will say I have seen the footage. It's kind of impossible not to see it at this point. It is all over the place. I try to avoid it a little bit, but every time I go on Twitter, it's right there in front of me playing. So I've seen it. I've watched it. I've actually watched it multiple times, and I actually had to watch it multiple times to kind of get everything in order and get my thoughts in order. So this will not be the first time I'm seeing it. So the reaction you're going to be watching is not going to be like a live, like first time reaction kind of thing. But we're going to watch the video one more time. We're going to watch the gameplay just in case you guys haven't seen it. I know a lot of you probably haven't, but we're going to watch it again so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. And then when we're done watching it, we'll go over some of the positives. So let's go right ahead and load up the video right here. So Rocky Marciano versus Joe Louis, wearing those vintage style gloves and the vintage style trunks as well. Very interesting seeing these guys with some really solid character models too, fighting in color. Because a lot of times when you go back and try to watch their fights, a lot of them are in black and white. So it's it's very interesting seeing these guys represented like this. Here we go. Look at the more modern style trunks. Of course, the more diverse glove color, the shoes. Boom, beautiful hook, another hook, uppercut. Very interesting how he put his hands down there. Oh my God, what's the referee doing over there? Very interesting, raised a lot of questions in terms of how the block is going to work. I know while reading some of the articles, they talked about how there's like a manual block and there's some kind of automatic block. But the block is one of the things we're going to talk about in terms of positives. As I look at the block, I'm liking what I'm seeing a lot. Beautiful duck under. And that's a check hook to it. Anytime I notice them take a step to the side with the left hook, that is a check hook. There's a hook right there, a left hook. Beautiful cross. Cross again. I love that bob and weave right there. We're going to cover that. Left hook. Connor Ben, Arturo Gotti. Noticing his stamina. Notice his stamina on the bottom right there. It was like flashing red, letting him know that his short-term stamina is pretty low at this point. He needs to stop throwing to let it recover a little bit. Caleb Plant. Loving those gloves Plant is wearing. So yeah, like I said, I mean, I've seen this before. So if I'm not like, oh my God, Jesus Christ, it's because I've already seen it. But I just wanted you guys to watch it, take a look at it. Just for those of you that haven't seen it, make sure you have an opportunity to watch the whole entire thing. And then we're going to talk about some of the positives, man. Sits him down right there, fight over. I love whatever arena this is. I love the lighting here. This seems more recognizable. The others has a interesting color to it, almost like a movie set. You know what I mean? You guys let me know what you also think about the camera flashes and the red blood splashes on the screen, as well as the veiny effects on the screen when they get rocked. You guys let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on that. I think it can be very cool, depending on like what your taste is. If you want a more realistic, more immersive feel, it's one of those things that you might want to turn off. But if you're the kind of person that likes a more theatrical, more cinematic kind of feel, then you might want to keep that on, especially if like you want like a clear visual that you've been rocked. That might be a very clear visual, like clear that you've been rocked. All right, so this is the video right here. Video is done playing. Like I said, it was about 4 minutes 23 seconds, and now we're going to start talking about some of the positives, a few things that I really liked. I wrote them out right here, so I'm just gonna make sure that I'm able to read it. First things first is, of course, the graphics. I think that much is pretty clear. Like from day one, from the very first time they started showing off Esports Boxing Club, the graphics is something that has always stood out. It's something that we can all agree on the fact that it looks pretty good. It looks really good. I also like the fact that the game has a unique look to it. Like, I wouldn't call it photorealism. It's sort of like, if you take a look at like Grand Theft Auto, like if you go online and you type in like GTA realistic mod, if you notice how some of those mods, like when you look at it, you can definitely tell that it's more realistic than the base game. But like if you look at it, it's not quite photorealistic, because like it looks wet, it looks super shiny. It almost looks like a movie. You know what I mean? Like when you watch a movie, it is realistic, but it's not like photorealism. Like when you step outside, it's not quite like it is when you step outside. That's kind of how it is with the game. It has a very interesting and unique look to it. The colors, how the different arenas also comes with different colors. Some has like a interesting blue tint, and then you have like some arenas that we saw with like some interesting spotlights on them. Overall, very unique, very interesting graphics. I think the character models look good. They look like the fighters, which is really the main thing that we look for in terms of character models. We want to be able to look at the fighter and immediately recognize this is the fighter. We don't want to look at the fighter and like have to crack our brains going, who's that? You know what I mean? If you know exactly who it is, we should be able to look at the character and go, oh yeah, I know exactly who that is. So in terms of graphics, in terms of the character model, the fighter attire, the gloves, the shorts, the shoes, the ring, the crowd, the lighting, the dynamic lighting, really, really solid. A+. We can all come to an agreement on that. Number two that I really appreciated while watching it is I noticed that their block bleed through. A very interesting thing, well, something that's very important with the block is to make sure that the block in the game that you're playing is not like some kind of force field, or like the block is not like a like punching a big brick wall that you can't get through. The boxing glove, even though it's big, even though you're able to kind of shell up and cover, there's still a lot of bleed through when a boxer is punching. If you notice in real life boxing, when fighters keep their hands tight to their face, as punches makes contact with the block, you're going to notice the block move. It's not always going to stay as tight, and that's what typically leads to bleed through. That's why we see boxers who sometimes will throw a few straight shots only to go round. A lot of that is because as he's throwing the shots, it's knocking the head back, and when it knocks the head back, it creates a small pocket to the side where a round shot can enter. And I did record I screen recorded a section of the game where you can see clear block bleed through. So we're going to slowly move this right here. This is Conor Ben versus Arturo Gatti. Arturo Gatti lands a beautiful left hook. The left hook shatters right through the block. It lands. And if you notice Arturo Gatti's left hand, right there, his left hand is already low because of the contact that the block made. And look at that. Block is already low. His punch made contact with this block and it's lowering the hand. Because the hands are low, look at that. His block on the left side is completely shattered from just one punch. And because of that, look at that. He's going to bring the block back up. But Conor is going to be able to, look at that. Look at the opening right there. There's a big hole right there that Conor is going to slide his punch in. Boom. Bleeds right through. Look at how his head is now completely removed from the gloves. The glove is not glued to his face. Because of the contact, it forced his head away from the gloves. And my guess is in this split second that his head is away from the gloves, you could probably also follow up with a few more combinations. This is very realistic. Having block bleed through like this is absolutely realistic. And I'm very glad that they thought about it while they were designing this game. Watch it again. Look at that. Beautiful. Watch that one more time. One, boom, beautiful bleed through. So I really, really, really like that. I really like that. I could watch that like over and over again. So that's the first positive that we're going to talk about. The fact that the block has really, well, the second one, we already talked about we talked about the graphics. We talked about that in the character models. Second thing is I noticed while watching through the content that there are different blocking styles even in one fighter, right? Like, for example, if you guys remember in Fight Night Champion, every single fighter had a specific blocking style, and that's the only blocking style you notice that they use. Same thing for a game like EA Sports UFC 4. For example, in Fight Night Champion, you had the Philly shell, you had the cross block, you had the peekaboo block, you had the mummy. You guys remember the mummy in Fight Night Champion? You had a few style of blocks, but the moment you assign your fighter that one block, that is the blocking style the fighter is going to use the whole entire time. So if your fighter, for example, is assigned the Philly shell, which is, you know, somewhere here, the shoulder block, the shoulder protects the chin. This protects against hooks. That is the only block style you're going to see your fighter use with every single exchange. He's not going to switch. But in Esports Boxing Club, I noticed that sometimes fighters will hold up like a regular, like textbook style of blocking, like they're like the classic peekaboo style, and then occasionally they'll switch from that to Philly shell. Switched from that to Philly shell. And I found that very interesting. I still don't know, of course, exactly how that works. Is it manual? Is it automatic? You know what I mean? Like, are you just holding block? And then depending on where the punches are going, the game automatically switches block styles? Or is this something that the player can do himself? That's a question that we're going to answer when we finally get our hands on the game. But just to give you guys an example of this, let's go ahead and watch that again. This is between Caleb Plant and Carl Froch. I believe that's how you say his name. Right there, Carl is going to land a jab to the body. The jab lands. Caleb reacts. But as the jab is landing, notice the blocking style. This is more like your textbook style of blocking. More like a peekaboo style of blocking. As the jab lands to the body, notice the block. But now, as he goes to throw a left hook to the body, the block is going to change. Notice that? He's going to throw a left hook to the body, and now he switches to a Philly shell, which I find very interesting. Like I said, not quite sure. It still lands, which tells me that it's possible the player tried to input like the Philly shell block. Maybe he thought that it was going to be a left hook. It's possible the player thought the left hook was going to go to the head. So jab to the body, left hook. That would block the left hook for sure. It's also possible he thought that it was going to be maybe a right hook to the body. That would block the right hook to the body. With the Philly shell, of course, to block the left hook to the body, when I see Floyd Mayweather do it, at least he kind of lowers, he leans in to allow his elbow to catch the punch. But right here, he doesn't lean in. So, like I said, I'm thinking that whoever was controlling this fighter probably thought it was going to be a left hook. So he switched the block style to a Philly shell, but it went to the body instead. But the fact that you can do that in the game, I find that very, very impressive, where you can switch your blocking style. So yeah, really impressive. I'm very glad that they're paying attention to that. Next up, we'll talk about fatigue. This was a question that I had, and I'm very glad to see that it's in the game. A lot of times, game developers, especially when they're developing a combat style game, they forget that fatigue, when a fighter gets tired, whether it's your short-term stamina or your long-term stamina, it does affect pretty much everything. It affects the speed of your punches. It affects how well you can take damage. It affects your locomotion speed, how fast you move around the octagon. It affects how well you can move your head. It even affects how well you can hold your block. It affects everything, man. Fatigue, if you don't have enough gas in you, if you don't have enough LOL, if you don't have enough gas in you, if you don't have enough stamina to hold your hands up, move your feet well, to be athletic, your body is going to represent that. Your body is going to slump. Your hands will get low. Your mouth will open because breathing through your nose is no longer sufficient. You need more air coming in, so your mouth will open. The way you move around the cage, the way you move around the ring will also be affected. That it's going to be very clear. A lot of times games forget to do that, but it seems like the developers at Steel City Interactive, they did not forget that, because there were some clips in here. I'm going to show you guys one of them where, as the fighter was fatiguing, you'll notice his mouth open, his posture break a little bit, his locomotion slow down, the punch he throws is a little bit more labored. That is pretty clear. We're going to watch that right here. I want you guys to pay attention to Connor in this clip right here. Look at that. His mouth open. Look at that. Mouth open. Let's watch that one more time. I'm going to slow it down so you guys can see. So right there, if you pay attention to his stamina, his short-term stamina below on the right side of your screen, you're going to notice that it's fairly low right now. Once again, block, bleed through, which is, I'm just so glad they added this to the game, bro. Beautiful block, bleed through, shatters through the block. But Connor is still trying to throw. And as he's trying to throw, his stamina is starting to flash red, letting him know, look, you are gassed. Now notice his mouth. His mouth is now open. Notice that? You guys notice how his mouth is open? Look at that. Mouth open. His posture is slumped a little bit. Clearly he's gassed. I'm gonna play that through one more time so you guys can see. Now his mouth is open. Clearly letting you know he's tired. So if for some reason, that tells me that if for some reason we want to play the game without the HUD, if we want to turn off the HUD and just have like a more immersive experience, the game has enough animations in there to let you know when you're tired, when you need to slow down. Fight Night did a really good job of that. So to see that brought in to Esports Boxing Club, very commendable. Very glad that they did that. Next up, so I'm going to make sure that everything's still recording. Next up is, I like the fact that there are no invisible walls. This is something that we talked about, man. A lot of times when you play these combat video games, it's not possible to clash, to come very close to each other, because there's like an invisible wall separating the fighters. You can only get so close to your opponent. There's a certain point where you just can't pass. There's clearly something right there in between separating both fighters. EA Sports UFC 4 has that. It drives me crazy. And a big reason why, of course, they have that is because, without that, you do run into a risk of the game looking clunky and messy, because players, a lot of times, especially when players are brand new and they're not trying to fight a clean, aesthetically pleasing type of fight, they're going to constantly collide and over again. And that's something we'll talk about in part 2 of the video. But the fact that they have that tells me that they're thinking about boxing game correctly, because there is no invisible wall in real life. Fighters collide into each other all the time. They collide every single time they're trying to box. I mean, the vast majority of boxing has clinching over and over again. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the clinch is going to be integrated into the game. Can you seamlessly go from punching to clinching, and from clinching to punching seamlessly, where it doesn't seem like two systems, where it seems like one system meshed together? That's going to be very, very, very difficult to do, I think. I do think it will be hard to do. The only game that I will tell you guys did that properly was UFC Undisputed 3. Not even ESports UFC 4 doesn't feel like one cohesive system. It feels like two different systems. Like, when you're in a clinch, it's a completely different game. When you're out, it's a different game. So it will be very interesting to see how that flows. Can I punch into the clinch? Can I use the clinch to slow down my opponent? Can I use the clinch to crash in to my opponent and halt his attacks and prevent him from wailing on me? For example, if I'm tired or if I just want to break. And then while I'm in the clinch, can we strike? Can we strike while we're in the clinch? I know necessarily striking in the clinch is not like legal in boxing. I'm not sure what the boxing rules are, but while we're in the clinch, can we like throw small shots to the body? Can we punch out of it? Can we work out of it? When I watch boxing matches, I hear the referee always tell them, work out of it, work out of it. In other words, don't just clinch and hold each other. He wants them to work. He wants them to hit each other and fight out of the clinch. So I'm very curious to see if that's something that we'll be able to do in the game. But just to show you guys what I mean by no invisible wall between fighters, gonna go ahead and watch that through. You guys probably already see it, but go ahead and play that again. You guys probably already saw that, but there you go. Right here. Look at that. Look at how close they can get to each other. This right here, you don't see this in a game like UFC 4. You just don't. They can get very close, glove to glove. Will Brook moves forward once again, very close to each other. Yeah. So the fact that we don't see that invisible wall makes me very glad. I'm very happy that it's not there. That gives them so much to work with, so much potential. So it'll be very good to see how they work with that. And then last but not the least, this is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting aspects of this game, and that's the head movement. When you watch this clip, when I watch this clip, what I notice is that there is actually full 360 head movement in the game. Full 360 head movement is something that we've seen before. We've seen that in a game like Fight Night Champion. Fight Night Champion had full 360 head movement, where you can rotate your fighter's torso in a full 360 motion. In a game like ESports UFC 4, for example, it's 4 sides. You can lean forward, you can lean back, you can lean to the side, you can lean in either direction to the sides. You can't do a full 360. Now, what that means in a game like UFC 4 is that the head movement is digital. By that, I mean the game is programmed in a certain way that if you throw a jab and you move your head at a specific time, the jab is always going to whiff. Also, depending on your fighter's evasive properties, depending on his head movement stat. So you can, for a competitive game, a game where the outcomes are like guaranteed, where like players know for sure, if I do this right, the outcome is always going to be predictable. It's good. It's very good for a competitive game, because with competitive games, you want as few things left up to chance as possible. The more things left up to chance, your players are going to get angry. Let's just Get that out the way. Your players, your competitive players, they will not like it. They don't want anything left up to chance. But with realism, there's quite a bit of chance in there. And that's where the 360 head movement comes in. When I watch Esports Boxing Club, it's pretty clear to me that there's an analog system. In other words, the head is almost like a bowling ball, like a wrecking ball, I would say. Like a wrecking ball. Well, not a wrecking ball. Like a ball you hang on a string, right? Where when you try to hit it, if it moves just a little bit, you might whiff or you might not. So when the fighter throws a punch, he's throwing his punch at where the head was before it moved. But depending on how far you moved, you might whiff completely or you might clip it. Does that make any sense? So a digital system says the rules are set. If you move your head at the right time, the punch is going to whiff 100%. There is no clipping it. There's no almost whiffing. It's going to be 100% whiff. Boom, done. With an analog style head movement, it might hit, it might whiff, depending on how fast you move your head, depending on the angle of your head when the fighter is throwing punches at you. So in some cases, you might actually pull and the punch is still going to hit you. Other times, you might try to duck a hook and the hook is still going to hit you. Or you might try to slip a jab, but the jab is still going to connect. And at other times, that same jab that you try to slip is going to whiff completely. Other times, the cross will. So there's it's realistic, but some of your players will not like it. Some of your players, especially the more competitive ones, they're not going to like it because they're going to go, yo, I swayed that perfectly. Why did it hit me? It's because it's an analog 360 style head movement. I'm going to show you guys what I mean. So right there, you're going to look at Kell Brook. You notice he has his block up, and notice how he's going to move his head in a circle right there. See that? Yeah. Watch that one more time. Yeah. That's purely analog. That's an analog head movement system, head movement style. That's how it was in Fight Night Champion. A lot of players prefer this. A lot of players prefer it. It is more aesthetically pleasing because it's just more realistic. The torso is moving in a more realistic way, and players can get creative with it. Players can figure out certain angles where they can always move their head and always make your strike whiff. So you're gonna see your players start to figure things out with that. I find that very interesting. I didn't think they were gonna go with that, but man, it's pleasant to see that they did. I think a boxing game should have full active 360 style head movement, because that is how boxers and fighters move their head. That's how you're going to be able to do the Mike Tyson style weaves with his peekaboo, where you're able to move your head in every direction as opposed to only forward, back, and to the sides. So this video was supposed to be more on the shorter side, but my hope is that every single positive that I talked about here, that I was pretty clear what I was talking about, and that it was concise. I hope I didn't ramble too much, but that's going to be it, man. Like I said, really solid with the things that I liked. The things I liked, I really liked. The block bleed through, the different blocking styles for one fighter, the fatigue animations, the fact that when you get tired, your fighter is going to tell you with his facial animations, as well as the way he's moving. The no invisible wall between fighters, so fighters are able to actually clash and collide into each other, which will be interesting to see how they mesh that with the clinch. And then lastly, the full 360 head movement, which is analog as opposed to digital. I find all of these very fascinating. I'm very impressed with them, and I hope that they keep it going. So that's going to be it for the positives. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. It helps out the channel. If it's your first time watching me, maybe you're coming from the boxing side of things. If you enjoy what I do here, then consider subscribing. If not, that's okay. But watch out for the part two. Part two is where we give our critiques and we talk about what we don't like. And hopefully you guys give that video a chance as well. All right. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Peace out. Stay safe, boys.